welcome back to an episode of Building a Podcast App in Django. I think today I want to address some responsiveness issues with the podcast detail page. You can see here we've got lots and lots of episodes. In the case of this podcast, stuff you should know, I think it goes all the way back to 2012, and I've been doing it weekly, so there's a lot of elements there. If I click this, it takes ages to load, and then if I favorite and unfavorite things, that also takes ages to load because we're re-rendering this entire view here. So what I was thinking we can do in this episode is maybe paginate this list view, so only show maybe like 100 elements at a time, and then maybe we can do some HTMX. I think HTMX, they have like examples, and one of those examples is like lazy loading, or I think they had an infinite scroll demo. Like, whether we want this or not, I'm not sure. You can see here that it's actually just paginating it the same way that I think Django would paginate this, so it may or may not be straightforward to integrate. So that's one thing we can do. Another thing we can do is each time we click this, it's re-rendering the whole page. I think maybe we can just re-render the row in question that we're clicking on, so replace the current row instead of refetching the entire template to render first. So I'd like to start with that. So let's head to our views, and it's particularly here for favorite and unfavorite. You can see we're redirecting to the podcast view, and then HTMX will re-render like this entire detail view. So we'll be hitting this and it will re-render all of the rows at once. So I think here we can probably say like if request.htmx do one thing, else return another thing. But before I do that, I think maybe we can just refactor this method out, so we only have to change the code in one place. So let's just move this here, and then say defaults is going to be defaults, like that, and then maybe we can say update episode request pk, and then that should just be update episode, and I think we can stick the request post there as well. We can return new, and then here this is going to be false. So let's just make sure that is still working. So let's refresh this page. Again, this takes ages, but if we click and click, okay, so that seems to be at least working for the time being. So we just familiarize ourselves with the podcast detail. Here we have a for loop. We're looping over each list item here. Where's the end tag? Oh, I think this should actually be, you should be there. Is that right? Yeah, like that. And I think when we click this element, really what we could do is just like replace itself. So I think we need to move this into a like separate component, and then the target of that component is going to be like the ID of this this list item. So how can we do this? First, I guess we have to decide on like a template name. So say request.htmx, else can return render, let's say podcasts, and let's say episode, what should we call this? Episode list item partial HTML, and then we have the interaction, so let's just pass the interaction. And I think, what else will we need here? Oh no, it doesn't like that. Spot the syntax error, spot the syntax error. This looks valid to me. Let's just delete that. Return render request podcasts episode list item partial HTML interaction. Is that better? Okay, cool. And then so we have interaction, but then also we need the episode, I guess. So maybe we can say episode is going to be the episode. So if it's HTML, then we're going to do this. If not, we're going to just redirect to the podcast page, and that'll re-render everything. So episode list item partial. So I guess we can just copy. Oh, that needs to be HTML like that. Copy. Add file. Yes, HTML. Oh, do I already have a list item partial here? Just refresh that. Templates, podcasts. Okay, that's cool. So maybe then I can take this li here and just say include podcast episode list item partial HTML, and then that can go in there, and we can save that. And if everything's worked, when we refresh this page, it should look the same, which it does. Now if we click this, what happens? Nothing happens. We got a 500 response because episode is not defined. Yeah, that needs to be interaction.episode. And I think this might get funky because it's going to try and replace the entire page with just a single list item. So instead of replacing the entire page, in here, this target needs to be like the thing that we're currently on. So we can give this a unique ID and just call this like episode list item and episode.id, and maybe we can say here is episode list item episode, like that, maybe episode list item episode.id. So replace this. Let's just have a look at what's going on here. You can see, okay, so each episode, each li does have a unique ID here. And then, what is it done now? Firefox. We can say HTMX. We want to replace or swap the outer. What is it by default? Is the inner by default? I think it needs to be the outer, otherwise we'll end up with lots of nested list items. So let's say hx swap u, and then hx swap u, and then we go here and we refresh this, and let's give that a go. Awesome, so that is significantly faster than it was before, and we're not reloading the entire page. What I am worried about is the this on-click handler will have just been kind of erased because we're going back to the server to fetch HTML and it's being replaced.
Hey everybody!
Yeah, that kind of demonstrated that example there. So here what we're doing is we're looping over all the elements on page load. I don't think that's possible anymore. We have to do it for each like individual potential individual thing here. So maybe, just maybe, we can move this script into here to make sure that it always gets run, and then instead of episode URLs or this, we can maybe say the episode is going to equal document.get element by ID episode. It's not the episode list item, is it? Or is it the episode list item? Let's just duplicate like an ID here as well. We can say episode link episode ID, and we can say the episode is going to be equal to think we can do this, even though we're in JavaScript. Let's give this a go. So when we refresh the page, sorry, I want to know how juries work.
Get ready! Stuff
Okay,
they don't
that
want you to
works.
know is back in iHeartland for another.
Let's unfavorite favorite, so it's been replaced. Does it still work?
On Queen Charlotte, the
Yeah.
official podcast.
That still works. That's pretty nice. I'm wondering if we have to define this function every single time. Maybe in base we can add this script. I'm not too sure. Can we say like script? Do we have any player code here? We don't. But what happens if I said like a function play audio and we passed it the event, and we just did this and we kept the player here, and then instead of this we just had play audio? Would this work? There's only one way to find out. Let's refresh. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go.
Get ready! Stuff they.
Okay, cool. So, favorite, unfavorite.
On Queen Charlotte, the
Nice. That seems to be working suspiciously well. But of course, our initial page load still takes a long time. So I think maybe we can
on
look
Queen
at
Charlotte, the official podcast.
paginating this, and then potentially doing lazy loading if we have time. So we look at Django list view, paginate. Although it's not a list view, is it? It's a detail view. So how would you paginate? How would you paginate in a detail view? It's very easy to do in a list view. Using a paginator in a view function. So return render request page object. Maybe we need something like this. So the view in question. In fact, let's just let's commit some of these changes. Let's say git add, git commit, and let's say lazy, not lazy render. So only re-render episode list item when fave unfave. Okay, manage run server. So we go back to our views and we take a look at the podcast detail view. Here's where we're getting our query set. Oh boy. And we somehow want to paginate the episode set here, and then loop over the episodes in the template. So maybe we can override some sort of method that occurs after get query set. So let's just have a look at Django detail view again and figure out if it's straightforward to override something. Get context data. Maybe that one. We need access to kind of like the query. That's the problem. Render to response. Context. Or alternatively, we just rewrite this using a regular view and don't try and fight the framework, and just import paginator like this and paginate our objects that we pull out. Let's have a think. I think it might just be easier to rewrite this as a regular vanilla view. Shall we do that? Yeah, So let's do that. So let's say def podcast detail view request, and then is it a PK? We go to podcasts, the detail view. Yeah, so it's going to be UID. So maybe we can do podcast.objects.get all 404 with all of this stuff inside it, and then return the template. So let's have a look. Django get object all 404. But we also need to be able to pass a query set to it. So get object or 404. So you can say my model, but can you also do query set? You can. Cool. So we can say podcast equals. We probably need to import it as well, don't we? Get object of 404. Shortcuts. Get object of podcast equals get object of 404. We can say query set pk equals pk. We can say query set, and the query set is going to be basically all of you. Let's not delete that for now, just in case we need it. So we can say da-da, and then replace any occurrences of self like that. And then again, we need kind of this logic, but instead of this, it's going to be return render request, and then this and a dictionary, or just podcast detail partial and a dictionary. Yeah, is that right? Where here, I guess, what did we call this? Object? Yeah, where object is going to be podcast here. Object is going to be podcast. So, with that in place, I think we are in a good position to swap out this detail view with just podcast detail view. See if there's any complaints. Okay, I don't need as view, obviously. Let's have a look. Okay, so now if I refresh this, self is not defined. Obviously, I thought I got rid of those. So we can use self. Okay, yeah. So that needs to go. That needs to go. And refresh. Okay, that's interesting. We have nothing rendering. Okay, that's because I destroyed the template there. So we refresh this again. Again, nothing is being rendered. Why is that? We have if object episode in podcast. That's weird. We have all these objects, but also we have podcast. Podcast is the object, so maybe let's just return podcast. I'm not sure how we quite ended up in that situation, nor why Kate is complaining at me for those things. So let's say podcast. That is getting quite annoying. I might have to restart my editor. 2 secs. We go like that. Come back and run the server. Let's see if we've got any further now. No. Interesting. This just is completely empty now. So how do we debug this? Say podcast detail renders the podcast detail partial. Let's just say show me this podcast object that you have, unless of course get object or 404 is returning something weird for us. this should return the object, right? So interesting. If it's HTML, let's do this. Else return podcast detail. You know what? Sometimes I don't help myself, do I? And still cannot pass 207. Oh. There we go. Okay. Please, please, please. Dun, 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 dun. Alright, we're back. We are back. And I don't need stuff you should know up there either. So I think in my views, maybe one day I'll figure out how to correctly override the correct methods, but for the time being we can get rid of view. And we just have podcast detail in a nice vanilla view. And the whole point of this was so that we could render episodes with like this paginated thing. So let's give this a go. Let's import paginator and say da-da, and maybe we can say let's have a look at the examples that I've got here. So P, you paginate the objects that you want by the number of pages. Well, that's the number of items per page, I think. So let's say P is paginator podcast episode set, and I guess we can just return that P as the page object. Yeah, so here they're paginating by 2, so maybe we can just return if it's regular view, we can say page obj. It's just going to be whatever this P thing is. Yeah. Okay. And then in the template, let's just show that page object. Saying page obj. Okay. And refresh this page. Hopefully it won't blow up. Missing one positional argument. I gave you the argument. I said P is the paginator of the objects by... Oh, I didn't. Let's say 100 or 50. 50 episodes per page seems sensible. Refresh. Okay, and it's returned as a paginator. So how do we use that in our views? We can say for the contract in here. So instead of looping over the podcast episodes, we're going to loop over the paginated episodes. So instead of this episode set.all, I think we can do the page object. Refresh us now, there should be significantly less episodes. No, it doesn't like that. For contact in page object. How do we get this page object thing? Related object manager is not subscriptable. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Here you actually have to do paginator.getPage, of course. That would be obvious. It would help if I did read the docs. And here they've just called it paginator, so let's do the same thing. Paginator is this, and then they're returning the page object is the page object. Yep. Page object. If we go back here and refresh. Type error. Here we go. It's paginator.getPage page number. What? Have I definitely got this example the same? Here we go. Contact list is these objects. Maybe I need to say .all here. paginate that by, let's just do 5, so it's obvious, and then page number, and then paginated.getPage. Yeah, I think it was the .all that was blowing it up. Awesome, well that seems to work, so we can go back here, get rid of you, and then maybe we can, it still takes ages to load, so we go episodes, so the episodes is going to be loaded, so we click, and there's nothing here, that's weird, because we're doing HTMX, and HTMX doesn't know anything about our paginator, so maybe let's just include it in there as well, so views, yeah, let's just say you as well, and then hopefully it should work for HTMX. Go back home, Python bytes, yeah, stuff you should know. Ooh, that's still quite slow, but significantly faster than it was. Okay, so let's bump this to like 50, refresh this page, and that's quite a lot of content, so maybe we can paginate after 50. So here they have some examples of some buttons, so I'm going to be pragmatic and just copy paste this into our partial template here, and let's just plop that in there and see if it just works out of the box. And whilst we're testing this, let's drop it back down to 5. Dun, 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 dun. So we can say go to the next page, 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 and that all works, but this is not using HTMX, this is using you know, regular Django server-side rendering, so if I actually play an episode, if it does decide to load,
what if I told you
and then
there
click next, it will stop playing. So I maybe need to do some stuff with HTMX here, but can we make these buttons just a bit prettier? We can say bootstrap, and let's look for maybe like pagination. And we can do something like this, maybe. So what have we got? We've got like page of, and we can say first, next, last. Is there an example that we have here? Dun, 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 dun. Let's find the most complete example. Let's take this one, I think. And if you are on a certain page, maybe we can disable what's going on. So if we go to podcast detail partial here again, in this pagination thing, we can paste this nav. Okay, so previous instead of previous, we want to say if page obj dot has previous, then we can say else. So if it has previous, then we can show it. If it doesn't, then we can disable it. And the href here is just going to be whatever this is, so page equals, let's just copy this, like that. Maybe we can inline this if page not previous disabled, but let's not bother with that for the time being. Refresh this, see if it works. So previous, let's get next working, so we can say if page object has next, so we can copy this, else end if, so we can say next. If it doesn't, then we can disable this link, and then the next item is always going to be this next page number, I guess. So we can take what's in here, and the href can be this. So if we refresh the page, then the next should also work. So next, next, next. Maybe we also want like a first and last, and we want to update these page numbers. So right now this is just hard coded as 2, just like our current page. So they have here, they show page.obj number, so we can replace 2 with page.pageobj number, like that. Do we want the href to work here? Probably, like page equals page obj dot number, like that, right? So refresh that. That should be 11, and then instead of 3 and 1, we can have the next and previous. So this can be page obj next page number, and the href can be page equals page obj next page number, and then instead of 1 here, it can be page equals page obj previous page number, and then here again page obj previous page number, like that. We refresh one more time. Okay, so we move 10. That's working nicely. If we go all the way back to page 1, what happens? Is it going to blow up? Page number is less than 1, yeah, so here we need to say probably only if you have a previous page, maybe. So we want to show that one there, potentially, and we want to show this one here. Is that right? Let's refresh. Yeah, so next. Is there a final page number? Final end index? Yeah, so maybe we can do something like that where we have a final page, or we're not too bothered with that. Previous, and then it's disabled. If we go all the way to the end, not sure how many, oh, there's lots of pages. If we go all the way to the end, last, then next here should be disabled. If we have next, else we're going to disable it, right? Weird. Oh well, I'm kind of happy with that for the time being. So we can just delete, I guess, this little Django version, and maybe figure out how to align this properly. How have they done it here? Although I quite like this as well. We have these nice buttons. So here we have this flex and this container. We're inside the container. Maybe we need to just add like an extra row here. So we say div, and say like class row, and let's add some padding as well. See what you look like. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. So now we have pagination, so these episodes are a bit quicker to render. So, I mean, I wonder now if it's worth exploring this HTMX paginate stuff to do this infinite scrolling. How difficult is this example going to be? The final row, or the last element of your content. So when you scroll to it, you get the next page, and you append this. If this works, as straightforward as this example, then that would be quite amazing. But I'm honestly not sure I'm convinced. And we only if we do that, we only want to show this then if we're like in HTMX mode. And I'm not sure how you do that. So for each one of our items here, we're including this list item partial. So list item partial, and we'll be adding even more stuff to this thing here. So let's just try it, you know. Let's just say page equals page obj. Do we have page obj? We don't necessarily have the page object, but we do have like the request, whatever is in the request.url. So the problem here, I'm thinking, is like if we favorite and unfavorite something and return this item partial here, we don't have the page object because this is not the thing that controls like pagination. So we might just have to say like request.get.thingybob plus 1. So let me just find where the title is here, and then maybe we do like request.get.page. So each one of them should say 8. And can we just add 1 to this? Add 1. Okay, so maybe this will work. So inside this href, maybe we can do like hx.get page, where the page is going to equal request.get.page, add 1, and the trigger is going to be revealed, and we're going to do hx swap after end. Whoa, this isn't gonna work, is it? Because what this is gonna do is it's gonna hit our podcast detail inside here, and it's gonna re-render the entire partial, and really we need to only re-render these episode list item partials. So we need to have like a subset of this, I guess. Ooh, this is gonna get tricky. Let's just see what happens, and then maybe that'll inform how we debug it. Whoa! Yeah, so it's nesting the entire application, which is pretty cool. So let's think about how we do this. So if it's HTMX, we want to render, let's just say, podcast detail episode. We already have this podcast detail partial though, don't we? So, we already have this. Wow, this is really tricky. It's like when you navigate to this, it's rendering podcast detail partial. In fact, let me just turn this on. Turn that off for the time being. So we render to this. When we click on this, it's rendering the podcast detail partial because it's replacing this entire page with this subset of data. But when we do this like infinite scrolling, we want to call a view that only loads like a subset of these templates, and it means I don't think we can use this same view, this podcast detail view. Maybe it has to be like an episode list view for a particular podcast, unless we have logic inside the template that figures out where the previous request has come from, maybe. So if you are referred from another page, so if I'm on this page and I'm scrolling and I request from podcasts, maybe I can return a different template conditionally, but that feels kind of janky. Let's look in our session data if we have anything or anything we can use here, like the referrer stuff, templates, headers. So yeah, you could look in the referrer and see, like, if I'm on the podcast page, then I can definitely do certain stuff. So now in the headers, the referrer, no, you can't, because the referrer is always going to be this, isn't it? Okay, maybe I leave this for another day and just leave in this kind of pagination for the time being, and think about that as like an extension for the future. But for the time being, yeah, be happy with that, because it's made this view a lot faster. The other thing that would really benefit from this as well is this episodes page. You certainly do not want all of these episodes to be showing here all at once. So I would like to do the same kind of solution for all of these views as well as here. But I think the last thing I will do is actually bump this back to 50. Just double check that everything is still working. I mean, worst case scenario, what I can do is just make some of these buttons actually HTMX, so that it doesn't actually disturb playback, and then the whole app will still be kind of interactive anyway. Alright, yeah, so I'm kind of happy with that now. This at least was neat, being able to replace each of these favourites has made it a lot more responsive. So yeah, in the next episode I think we'll work on paginating this, and then soon I want to get to actually updating these podcasts. It's not much of a podcast app if the podcasts don't update themselves. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.